Warning. This episode contains some strong language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Trunk, reading the stories that did make it. I'm Hilary D. Bisnieks. Listeners, it is my extreme, just indescribable pleasure today to welcome an author who honestly needs no introduction, but I will say Chuck Tingle is the world's greatest author. Chuck, welcome to the podcast.
Wow! Oh, that you cut right to the chase. I like that. That's probably the best introduction I've gotten in a long while. So I appreciate it, and thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
Absolutely. I've been for like the last hour and a half. I've just been in like text chats with all of my friends, being like, I am freaking out because I am talking to one of my absolute heroes
Oh
in
wow!
an hour, and like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to keep my chill, so here we
Oh,
are.
that's really, it's very chill so far. What kind of advice did they give?
Uh, well, I think my wife said it best, which is I'm very good at talking to people about their interests and about their stories, and I've been doing this for 5 years, so I can do this.
Yes, that's perfect. Yeah, of course. Dang, it is so. Well, there's so much to discuss, and there's so much in this. We kind of in the pre-show chat, we're talking a little bit about some autism spectrum things, and I find with my place on the spectrum, I know a lot of it. There can be kind of social anxiety around it, and I guess I get a little of that, but actually, I am very adept at social interactions because kind of game theory them in head. I feel like I see all these angles, and part of what makes me good at it is one years of practice of not being great at it, and then kind
For
of
sure.
streamlining it like I'm a dang machine learning computer or something like that. And then what I have found is that I'm very good at things like interviews or chatting to buds because I have a genuine interest in others. And
Yeah.
I think that from you, I can already tell just from talking. Maybe we are similar in that way of that. Buckaroos. If you ask questions, buckaroos are gonna want to talk. It's actually I think it's harder for me to talk about myself. I think you have the dang easy job of asking the questions. I wish I could just every conversation. I just want to know about the other person. I want to be the one asking all the questions.
Absolutely, yeah. No, and it is like I've found I didn't know that I was autistic when I started this podcast, but I found
Oh yes.
that this podcast is a really great way of getting to know people for me because I just get to like I have a script. I have,
Oh yes.
I get to ask these questions and it's on the other person.
That's perfect. Yeah, I totally understand that. It is you know what to expect. It is laid out. You say here is each section. So that is wonderful. I think that gosh, it's so nice to think just as time goes by that buckaroos I think are becoming more in touch with maybe some of these neurodivergent ways. When I was a young buckaroo, there was very few who would talk about being on the spectrum, and so there just wasn't as much identifying in that way because buckaroos didn't know. They didn't. There wasn't a way to kind of put that together. And I find it so moving to just see more and more buckaroos kind of understanding themselves in this way and finding a place. Oh man, it is moving, and I don't know. It's just great. So well, and thank you for talking about that and being a part of that. And everyone who can be open about that and feels comfortable discussing it, like you have.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess to pat myself on the back like I am with Camp
Yeah, please
Damascus.
do.
I think that it just is creating an atmosphere as we move into the future that others can feel comfortable about their way and being open and not repressing any of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, truly, truly, this proves love in a just like a really fantastic way.
Yes, yes.
The more we can be open and honest, and the more we can show people, like, yeah, I'm trans, I'm queer, I'm autistic, and I'm also just like a regular ass person, just like everybody else.
Yes, absolutely. There is so much. We growing up had all these stories, and there was so much tragedy in the stories of these communities. And to be fair, at that time, things were difficult, so it makes sense. But I just really like that we are honoring these tragic stories and saying these are important. There is a place, but also we're saying, there's also stories of joy, and there's also stories of kind of neither, of just, hey, I just got a normal thing life. I'm trotting along, nothing too bad, nothing too good. This is just my way, and
Mm-hmm.
all the way in between. And I think that is so important. Instead of just painting these groups as being just completely overpowered by tragedy of it.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, so we're obviously here to talk about the ways that we can prove love, and one of them is with your brand new book, Camp Damascus, which, like, if I had to pick out a thesis for this book, it would be that love is real and love is powerful, and also there's scary stuff in the world, and we can get through despite that. Uh,
Yes.
and I'm wondering if I can just read a section out of the first chapter of this book for us.
Yes. Of course. It is. I am. Oh my gosh, I'm nervous about this. I will say when I get the audiobook,
Mm-hmm.
I will probably. I bet I won't listen to it. So I'm going to hang on like I'm on a roller coaster and listen along, and
You've got this.
we're gonna get through this.
Mm-hmm. So this is from Camp Damascus, Chapter 1, Leap of Faith. You've got no shadow, Martina informs me, gazing down at my feet and then shifting her eyes back up to mine. I check, and sure enough, my friend is largely correct. Thanks to the afternoon sun hanging directly overhead, it appears my shadow has mostly disappeared. It's a subtle observation, a phenomenon you'd never really notice unless you were looking for it, and yet Martina has pointed it out with an excited grin. Of course, closer examination would reveal that my shadow, while small, is still there. Hawaii is the only state where your shadows do completely disappear, and this rare event only happens twice a year. It's called Lahaina Noon. I don't say this, though. I think to ask why Martina is so excited about her flawed discovery, one that immediately falls apart after the slightest direct inspection, but I quickly realize I don't have to. I, too, notice the little things Martina does, logging every tiny quirk of the world regardless of whether anyone else finds it worthy of comment. There are so many beautiful pieces in God's grand puzzle, and you can miss them if you're not careful. Yeah, I guess you're right, I offer. Like Peter Pan, Martina continues, the smile curling wider across her overwhelmingly freckled face. With anyone else, this unhinged friendliness might signal a touch of sarcasm lurking somewhere behind their large green eyes, but I know better. At least I hope I do. I nod along, smiling happily, despite suddenly finding myself in the pop culture deep end, with little understanding of what she's talking about. I've never read the book, nor seen any films related to this antique story with questionable motives. There's enchantment involved, so I know enough to stay far, far away. For a brief moment, I consider telling Martina that she shouldn't read that stuff, that the only magic she needs is the love of Christ. But I hesitate. I've had these conversations before, and even in a town as God-fearing as Neverton, there are only so many who want to hear it. Most Christian folks are friendly enough, but the second you start rubbing their faces in these little indiscretions, they bristle. The last thing I want is to make Martina bristle. "Did you have to read that freshman year?" she asks, clearly noting the pained expression on my face I'm so desperately struggling to avoid. I shake my head. "No," I reply flatly, rejecting explanation. The truth is, I do remember Peter Pan being assigned an English class, and I remember the reports that accompanied this classic secular tale from James Matthew Barrie. I could easily tell you where the author was born, Scotland, how he died, pneumonia, or even let you in on the fact that he killed off an equally profane and godless character, Sherlock Holmes, in a non-canonical short story well before Sir Arthur Conan Doyle ever had the chance. These facts about the author create a window into his work, not a door. It's a window I've never crawled through. Intentionally. "Weren't you in my class?" Martina continues. "I thought everyone read it." Once again, I'm put to the test, reaching the familiar crossroads of how forthcoming I think I should be. I love Jesus. I really do. But Jesus would want me to be cool. He'd want Martina to think I'm cool. Kingdom of the Pine was founded on a bedrock of practicality, after all. Which brings me back to this conversation, and the sudden realization I've been standing in silence for way too long. I need an answer that will appease both a fellow student and the good Lord above, struggling to walk the razor's edge between the truth of my deeply held convictions and the relaxed sheen of a perfectly normal girl. Not all Kingdom kids are weird. I didn't think... I fumble, struggling to craft an excuse and coming up short as my mind tumbles and churns. My parents didn't want me reading it, I finally reply, submitting the truth and letting the chips fall where they may. Magic, you know? Martina's already enormous green eyes widen in shock. "Wait, really?" she blurts. Her expression is not what I expected, flooded by sudden excitement and genuine interest. I now realize she might be impressed by this moral objection, and my mind begins to race as I wonder if she's proud of me. Well, not prideful, but something like that. I've known Martina for a very long time, although we've only recently started talking in a meaningful way. Could she have similar convictions? Could this be the start of the deep, authentic friendship I've been hoping for? "That's fucked up," Martina finally continues, immediately prompting me to pump the proverbial brakes on my enthusiasm. "That's way fucked up, Rose. I'm sorry your parents are so crazy." I can't help nodding along, the muscles of my neck taking on a life of their own. "Yeah," I reply, rolling my eyes. "Way messed up. Parents, right?" The second these words leave my lips, I feel the deep ache of regret, a guilty pang that shoots down my spine as a sinful reminder God's watchful eye has noticed. Martina smiles, though, and suddenly this regret is met with something else, a surge of joy that counteracts the holy venom like anavip through the bloodstream of some poor soul who crossed a Pentecostal pit viper. I've got to pull back on the snake handling. "All right, see you at the bottom," Martina says. My friend promptly turns and breaks into a run, sprinting with her bare feet across the short, rocky runway. It's as though the frozen universe has started rolling on again, the rustle of the trees and the splash of water far below filling my ears. The other kids who've gathered around these cliffs watch in amazement, their hair wet and stringy as towels drape across them for a fleeting moment of dryness before the next brave leap. Everyone here is used to jumpers taking their time for a big show, standing at the edge of the cliff for a good while gazing down as though considering their surrender. Of course, once they've gotten to the rocky ledge, they rarely back down, and everyone watching knows this. It's all part of the performance, a temporary ringmaster gathering as many eyes as possible before rushing to the edge and hurling themselves over. They tumble down into the cool water below with a mighty splash, followed by excited cheers from their temporary but adoring fans. Martina doesn't need any of that. "Fuck!" she cries out as she springs from the rocks, her body rocketing forward while arms and legs continue pumping in the air. I can see the exact point that gravity catches hold of her body, gripping tight and then yanking downward in a sharp change of trajectory that would make Newton proud. I lose sight of Martina's long strawberry curls as she drops, but I'm too frightened to rush to the edge and witness her plummet. Seconds after disappearing from view, there's a loud splash, followed by a joyful eruption from the crowd. Their applause carries out through the forest around us, washing through the trees like audible water. Carefully, I creep to the edge and stare down into the swimming hole that lies below, the dark water still rippling from Martina's plunge. A few sunbathers lay out on the shore nearby in various states of undress, many of them less covered up than I'm comfortable with, and a handful of swimmers float on the outer rim of this dazzling natural pool. It's a hot day in Montana, so the falls are packed. I continue gazing, waiting for Martina to resurface as my heart rate needlessly quickens. She's done this jump hundreds of times, and it appears none of them have resulted in disaster so far. There's no logical reason for Martina to have any trouble this time around, but as I stare down at the reflective surface below, I can't help the tiny seed of fear that blossoms at the pit of my stomach. For some reason, I've found myself caring a lot about how things turn out for her. It feels, in a word, weird. A wave of relief pulses through my body as Martina breaks the surface, taking a big gulp of air and instinctively whipping her red hair from side to side. She begins swimming gracefully across the water, making her way to the shore. From up here, I can see her body move in a completely new light, propelling forward with majestic elegance. She looks like a frog as she kicks her legs, but that comparison sounds brash and awkward, while Martina is nothing of the sort. "You gonna give it a shot?" a voice abruptly questions from behind, breaking my focus and causing a startled breath to catch in my throat. I turn around to find my friend Isaiah, his shirtless body already deeply tanned in the afternoon sun. His hair is still wet from the last leap, and I have no doubt he'd love to make another running launch off this cliffside. However, Isaiah has taken a moment away from his own madcap antics to nurture my growth as a future daredevil. "I was thinking about it," I admit. Isaiah cracks a smile. "It's not as hard as it looks. I mean, we're only 30 feet up. You're not gonna die." "People died while jumping here in 1977, 1980, and 2016, I inform him. "So, it's possible." "Oh," Isaiah replies, his enthusiasm abruptly deflating. He narrows his eyes as a confused expression crosses his face, suddenly faced with this unexpected kernel of self-doubt. "The average speed of a dive is 15 feet per second. Therefore, a swimming hole between 10 and 15 feet deep could paralyze you in less than a second." I don't mention this. "You're still not going to die," I assure him. "The chances of fatal injury are phenomenally low. If you want to increase your survival odds, just make sure you jump feet first. Never dive." Isaiah nods along as I pull him back into mental alignment. "Plus, God's watching over you," I continue. Isaiah smiles a toothy, all-American grin. My friend reaches out and places a hand on my shoulder in a gesture of reassurance, lingering there a little longer than I might have expected. "Amen." Finally, I let out an awkward laugh, and my friend removes his hand. "Let's see it then," Isaiah says, nodding toward the cliff's edge. "What you got, Rose?" Isaiah backs away and motions for the other kids up here to clear a path. They're waiting and watching now, their eyes trained on me in anticipation of the leap to come. 9 out of 10 accidents occur when people are playing near the water's edge, not when they're focused on jumping in. I pull off my long dress and toss it to the side, revealing the most decidedly modest black one-piece I could find online. Unlike Martina, however, I'm not yet comfortable enough to flip myself into oblivion without a good look below. I know I'll be fine. that most of the danger here is nothing but an illusion, but my brain understanding this is one thing, and my body appropriately reacting is another. My heart is slamming hard within my chest, thundering away as a sizzling hot tingle makes its way across my skin. This is your fight or flight response. Your sympathetic nervous system is releasing catecholamines and making you hyper aware of your surroundings. The solution, of course, is grounding and prayer. I spend a moment observing the scene around me, taking in faces on every side of the watering hole. Across the way, on the opposite cliff, even more of my peers watch with excitement and anticipation. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Some people come here to jump. Others just want to be part of something. As the school year comes to an end and we all prepare to leap from our own metaphorical cliffs into adulthood, it's easy to get restless. We're all pretending it's midsummer and we're finally free, despite the fact that tomorrow we'll be right back to the Monday grind. I get the distinct feeling I'm living in what will someday be a fond memory. With that, I command my foot to take its first step toward the edge. My body refuses to move. The Lord is my light and my salvation, I repeat. I take a deep breath and center myself once more, focused on compelling my body forward. Still nothing. I remain motionless, staring out at a sea of classmates on the opposite cliffside while they gaze back at this curious standoff between mind and body. It's not so bad once you start running, Isaiah says from behind. Once you reach the edge, the hard part is over. His words are kind, and I appreciate this vote of confidence, but in a practical sense it does absolutely nothing. I'm displaying textbook freezing behavior, and Isaiah has no more control over my blastolateral amygdala than I do. Suddenly, another familiar voice chimes in, hooting like a baseball coach from the dugout. "Let's go, Rose!" I glance over to find Martina has already climbed back up, soaking wet with a towel wrapped tightly around her body. Our eyes meet and she smiles warmly, immediately melting away the anxiety and fear that had paralyzed me with its icy grip. She winks. I grin back, basking in this feeling for a moment, then return my focus to the cliff. Feeling renewed, I prepare a third attempt to compel myself forward, but before I get the chance, my gaze falls onto something strange across the ravine. The other side of the cliffs is fairly close, some 40 feet across, with a small waterfall carving its way down the middle in a never-ending cascade. Fellow classmates in their colorful swimwear line the opposite edge, but tucked back into the forest is another figure that watches with stoic intensity. I squint a bit, struggling to parse whether my eyes are playing tricks on me through the shady wood. A frighteningly pale woman is standing in the forest, her hair long and black as it hangs limply over her face and around her bony shoulders. It appears she's staring directly at me, but it's difficult to tell because her eyes lack irises or pupils. They're solid, white globes. The woman is smiling, her expression frozen and her teeth unusually stained with dark brown and black smears. The teeth themselves are crooked and long, as though her gums have receded to provide an unnatural length. Yet despite all of this, the strangest thing about the woman's appearance is what she's wearing. She sports a deep red polo shirt with a stark white name tag pinned to the chest. It's the kind of top you'd expect to see worn by someone arriving to fix your wireless internet or telling you which aisle to check at a department store. She also wears a thick metal band around her neck, pulled tight like a collar, and khaki pants. And that's, I think, where we should end. Right at the spooky bit.
I gotta say, first let me say, I've heard this before, but you are a very good reader for reading aloud. Your voice is great for that. I thought that was going to be a roller coaster for me, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much, and gosh, you just did such a dang good job.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Yes.
I had not practiced beforehand, and I just I don't know. My brain lets me do that sometimes, and other times I just am standing up there, white knuckling the desk, and just hoping nobody knows
Oh
how
yes,
scared I am.
yes, standing on the edge of the cliff at the old swimming hole
Absolutely.
with the freeze response.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I understand this. No, that was great. Also, um, having turned in this book, you work so hard on a novel, and
Mm-hmm.
every dang line after editing it and reviewing it so many times. Um, it was kind of a treat to go back. I do have this fear of, oh, there's going to be something wrong or
Oh,
something like
yep.
that. And listening back, I thought, oh, hey, good job, Chuck. You wrote a pretty good book. Okay,
Mm-hmm. Wrote a dang
so
good book there, Chuck.
that was great. I also in the very beginning, I have this part of my novel writing technique. I do a lot of planning.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that my process, the planning section, um, in my head is probably the longest, and that's about 2 months of. I
Mm-hmm.
don't write anything down, but I work out every story beat in my head, and from beginning to end, there will be a point where these ideas come in and out,
Mm-hmm.
where eventually I can just tell myself the story uh, without writing it down or anything. And then after those 2 months, once it's all there, I'll write it down into the story beats, and then start to write. And the actual writing part is actually much shorter than
Oh,
that.
wow.
Yes, it's pretty much all in my head until it's done, and then it just then flies out. But one of the techniques that I use. I don't. Dang it, I don't know if this is too much of a. I don't want. I'm going to say mild spoiler for any horror novel that I write. I
Mm-hmm.
am. I am big into a first image and last image uh,
Mm-hmm.
as a metaphorical version of change. And I do that in Straight, my novella before this. I do that in Camp Damascus. I do that in Bury Your Gaze, which is the next book of my Nightfire contract. And it was very interesting hearing, this opening chapter of the book. If you track the metaphors and themes, wow, it is a mirror image actually
Yeah.
in a lot of the ideas, which it is nice to hear that. Anyway, that was my rambling reaction, but that was very enjoyable actually.
Oh, thank you. I have to say that when I was reading this and getting towards the end of the book, I kept on finding myself just like yelling out, "It's rhyming!" Like
Yeah,
the way that
yes,
that was bookending. There's a great scene without giving too much away where we get this rhyme of the Peter Pan shadow thing later in the book, and I was just hollering about that. It was great.
yes. That oh, dang, very very nice. I like them. Dang, I have never thought of that terminology of rhyming. That's a
Mm-hmm.
great one. That is a great one. Yes.
Yeah. I think I picked that up from this podcast called A More Civilized Age, where they talk about all the Star Wars shows.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Very neat.
Yeah. So, because this is Tales from the Trunk, I'm wondering if there are any parts that, when you were spending this 2 months outlining this book in your head, are there any parts that you thought of early on that just for whatever reason couldn't make it in to the book, that you're really, sad couldn't make it in for whatever reason?
Yeah, well, there's I think two interesting things about that. In brainstorming stage, I would say that I enjoy these characters so much, and I enjoy the story, and I enjoy the catharsis of the story,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that it ends. I would say the last moments of the story. If you understand the beginning of the story, it actually has to end when it does.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to give too much away, but yes, if you go and read the beginning and the end, you think, oh, I understand. That has to be where it ends to kind of complete this circle. But that being said, when I was brainstorming it, part of me thought, wow, that's a great ending. But also, um, dang, I wish I could hang out with these characters a little more. I think
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have so much theme to that and a sort of an artistic loop going on, I probably would have wanted to extend it a tiny bit more. But I also it was a give and take. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, the thematic closing of the loop was more important than kind of giving just a little more of sitting with those characters. But also, the way that I write is I like it to be very streamlined. Cut
Mm-hmm.
off anything unnecessary. In that way, I think that I write similar to the way you would maybe write a screenplay, actually. And
Mm-hmm.
I try to pace them like films because most of my influences are film rather than writing.
Right.
So I just I wanted to keep the pace up too. So that was another reason why I said, okay, we can end it where it does. And I think the other interesting thing, well,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Do you have any? I don't want to just keep rambling.
No, no, no. I
Uh,
want you to keep rambling.
okay, I'm a
That's what
ramble
this show
away.
is for.
Yes. Well, the other thing is less about the planning stages and more about things that were cut or different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think my favorite thing about working with Nightfire and my editor there, Kelly. Kelly is amazing. Um, uh, I think that my work and my art is very appreciated, and I got zero requests to cut anything out of the book. When I handed the
Oh, dang.
manuscript, they said, "This is we love this. It's amazing. If you work with us, we are not going to ask you to cut anything. It is being perfect as it is." What they did do is they talked about there were one or two scenes that they said this might be better to add.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about it and I thought, oh yes, you are correct. And I guess that's a very important thing if you're working with an editor or a publishing company. That they're giving you advice that you can take and look and think, oh wow, you're right. Because I'm so specific with my art, it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of it's very hard for me to be honest. This is a critique of myself. It's very hard for me to hear a critique and think, okay, yeah, okay, you got a point. I try to be open, but I'm very
For
close to my
sure,
art.
yeah.
And when I heard the notes from Kelly, I sat with them and thought, oh yeah, that is absolutely true. Um, and then it was my decision instead of adding. There was one thing that I added, and there
Mm-hmm.
was one thing that I was asked to add, and instead of adding, I swapped it out. I
Oh,
took
yeah,
a
yeah.
scene that was there, I added what they wanted, and on my own choice, I thought, well, now that we added this, we don't need that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. I can talk about that. See, that's kind of the point of the show to talk about these scenes, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can say what it was. There is a point where I kind of wanted to talk about Kingdom of the Pine and what I set up this church. There's two things that I wanted to show with the sort of sect of Christianity in this. Number one is that I wanted them to be pretty dang, um, again, mild spoilers. I wanted
Mm-hmm.
them to be belief wise pretty dang normal as a sort of reveal that you kind of build up. Oh, this is going to be some cult with all these strange beliefs and all
Mm-hmm.
these things. And I think it's so much more effective if the big reveal is actually they just are kind of believing the same thing that most Christians believe. Actually,
Yeah.
I actually something that has always really stuck with me was in Get Out by Jordan
Mm-hmm.
Peele, making the family liberals instead of these very hard right conservatives,
Yeah.
is the key to that movie. It creates so much nuance and balance, and the best part is when the dad's saying, "Oh, I would have voted for Obama for a third term," and
Hmm.
that whole scene, that's the genius of that movie to me. So I kind of have always, I think when it comes to the stories, especially horror, when you're doing a sort of social horror deconstruction, there's so much to mine in a reveal kind of being actually, this church is belief wise pretty dang normal or pretty similar to what people actually believe. Um,
Hmm.
then the second quality that I gave them is I thought, well, I do want it to still be kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Not evil and far out and oh they're worshiping these strange things, but okay, what's going to give them flavor? And so I thought, well, why don't we do a set that has found holiness in capitalism, and
Hmm.
essentially what they believe is that that the way into the hearts and minds of those who need to be saved is in actually embracing treating the church like a business. And so that is kind of in their tenets. And that is why they're called Kingdom of the Pine. Actually, it's not explicitly said, I don't think, but really, what I wanted to say was that the pine or wood is the symbol of the creation of a product. So, Kingdom of the
Hmm.
Pine is saying we are the kingdom of the wooden cross as a product, as pine, as material that we are using to gather followers. And we are
Yeah.
going to reject the idea that there's anything wrong with that. And so they are sort of a capitalistic sect. And so that was kind of my idea. And to show that, originally I had a sort of multi-level marketing meeting
Hmm.
with a big group at one of the characters' houses where Rose gets kind of exposed a little bit. And it was pretty good. It was a good scene, but my editor thought of an idea of, well, it kind of it feels weird that these high schoolers, even though they are technically a bit older, are already getting into this. I thought, yeah, well, maybe one of them will. So I took what happened at someone's house uh,
Hmm.
in a big group to make it a more intimate one-on-one meeting at a coffee shop. And
Yeah,
that
that was
actually
a
allowed.
great,
Oh,
great
thank
part.
you. And funny enough, that's one of my favorite scenes because I think two things happened there. One is I got to, when you make it one on one, I got to add a little bit of a scare and bring in another demon that
Hmm.
wasn't originally mentioned. And it gave me an opportunity to kind of talk about the diverse sort of body types or ages or presentations of the demons. So I did a different kind of one in that scene. And then the other thing it allowed me to do is kind of humanize the members of the church, even the ones that kind of, I won't say, I guess are villains, but under the power. So that character
Hmm.
is not necessarily good, but she's just afraid. And so I
Yeah.
kind of got to show that it's more about the fear of these people who are really under the thumb. And so that was the scene that was added and swapped out. And I think the what was added is actually much more effective.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so we've touched on a number of great things without giving too much away. Do you have any parts that you're just super jazzed for readers to get to when they get this book in their hands?
Oh yes, I definitely am. I think that that's very hard to not get into spoiler territory. There's I think two things. Number one, I think that when I was in the idea phase, the
Mm-hmm.
ending, the ending, and specifically the soundtrack to the ending,
Oh yeah.
I'm a big time metal buckaroo, and I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of thought. what would be the worst nightmare of these people in this church? What would the surroundings be? What would the would there be flames? Would there be ice? I don't want to give anything away, but just like
Mm-hmm.
what would the visceral worst nightmare be, and what would the soundtrack be? And I just thought, oh dang, it's gotta be dang grindcore. And so I
Mm-hmm.
just something about that. And it seemed I say this as a joke because there are some pretty serious marginalized groups involved in this, but I also like to say this one's for the metalheads too. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a moment of that I think is so cathartic and just wonderful that I hope gets a lot of cheers. And that was one of when I was planning it, that moment was one of the first things that came to me with this idea. I
Oh,
had the
nice.
Yes, I had the idea, and then I basically thought of the idea, thought of the ending, and then kind of thought, well, how are we going to get from here to there?
For
Um,
sure.
and then the other thing that I'm very interested in that I can't really talk about yet is that um, this book actually kind of works on multiple reads
Mm-hmm.
because um, there's a lot of symbolism. There's
Mm-hmm.
and so that's something that I don't want to get too deep in the discussions because I feel like it's unfair to buckaroos who don't have early copies, and
Mm-hmm.
I just want them to have a pass at it without diving in. But eventually, I'm really looking forward to talking about not just the literal layer, but the biblical layer of what the different names and things mean,
Mm-hmm.
and then also the fairy tale layer. I will say, since you already mentioned it, it is still a minor spoiler, but I will say, well, maybe not even a spoiler. There is much more if you know what to look for regarding a certain theme of a certain story that I
Mm-hmm.
would say you could go through with a checklist. And once you start to notice them, there are things in this book like where certain characters, which hand they hold their guns with, what color certain people's chairs are,
Mm-hmm.
why Willow takes photos in a steady rhythm of her camera. That if you start to unravel one string, I think there could be a discussion of this in a few months once it's out, where some buckaroos will start to connect these dots and think, wow, I have not, there is just so much symbolism in this. I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an incredible book, and I've only just started unpacking it in my mind in the last couple of days.
Yes, yeah. Well, dang, thank you. That's so kind. I appreciate it. I'm just thankful to have this kind of opportunity. There are so many writers and readers who will write something and put this much care into the themes and
Mm-hmm.
symbols. And it's great to do artistically. It's very fulfilling, but also I think a lot of that just these are suitcases, these are trunks, as it were, that are
Mm-hmm.
left closed simply because the audience isn't large enough. So I'm
Yeah.
just honored that I think that there will eventually be this discussion, which I think is just so. I'm just so thankful. I'm great. I have so much gratitude for that.
Yeah. Well, I know that one of the discords I'm in is absolutely foaming at the mouth waiting to read this book. So
Oh
there will be a
wow,
lot of discussion there.
that's great. I tried to understand way of Discord, but I can't. I just don't even really. It's very hard to find them. Right? Is there?
Mm-hmm.
There's not even a dang central. There's not like a database where you can just search. Is there? I guess there kind of is, but I tried that once. I don't know. I didn't understand. Do you enjoy Discord?
I enjoy the servers that I'm in, I enjoy a lot, but they're very specific. Like a couple
Okay.
of them are just these are a few buds chatting
Yeah.
on,
Okay.
this specific topic or this general topic, and the other ones that I'm in that I really like are focused around a specific fandom. So like the podcast Friends at the Table, or there's one that I'm in that's just trans horror writers.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I think okay that solidifies my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
It is. I think it works best maybe as a smaller unit, a
Mm-hmm.
smaller community. I'm used to things like ways of doing Twitter or Tumblr where
Yeah.
it's just it goes out to everyone. I think that's maybe why I haven't fully understood way of Discord yet. But that's pretty neat.
Yeah. So a couple of quick questions before we get going.
Yes.
One, is there anything else that you would like our listeners to know about that you have coming out in the near future?
Oh dang. Well, I would just say right now, Camp Damascus. I have so many books. I've written probably 300 plus Tinglers, and
Yep.
I would just want to say that if you're listening to this and you appreciate my way, and you've checked out a couple of books, if you're going to actually sit down and take the time to order something or support one thing I've done, if you've been listening to my words a long time, Camp Damascus is the one. Not necessarily because of how much I love the art, which I do,
Mm-hmm.
and I just love the book, but because this is actually an opportunity for me as a sort of a bit of an outsider, a bit self-published, and certainly my art has a very unique way. There's an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity here to really kick open the door of the mainstream and bring something to a lot of buckaroos that I think doesn't often have the chance to do that. And
Absolutely.
so I would just say, I know that it can be a lot even to just think, oh, you think, oh, I gotta get that, and then you just don't think of it. I would say, if you ever really want to do something that's going to make a large difference in bringing unusual queer and autistic art to a pretty big place. Pre-orders of Camp Damascus, or just orders, could maybe set this up to have a big effect, which I
Yeah.
think is very exciting. And I have a mixed feelings about this because part of me thinks, well, I don't just want to be out there saying, "Bang, buy my book," and
Mm-hmm.
that does make me kind of uncomfortable. But at the same time, I'm just trying to recognize that, we only trot through this timeline once, and this is just—it's kind of rare that you're set up and thinking, "Wow, this moment, if this thing happens, then it could really topple a lot of dominoes in a big
Yeah.
way." Every move we make creates new timelines, but sometimes we get an opportunity to make a real big move. So I would just
Absolutely.
say this is that moment if you're interested in helping Chuck, probably.
Yeah. So Chuck, you're not comfortable saying buy my book everywhere, but I'm comfortable saying, listeners, true buckaroos, buy this book.
That's great.
Request this
Okay,
book
yeah.
at your library. Make sure that your independent bookstores are stocking it. Let everybody who you know who likes spooky things know that this book is coming out and it is getting my 5 stars,
So
and
kind. Oh,
hopefully
thank
that's
you.
worth something.
Yes. Oh, dang. No, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Finally, well, second finally, uh, is there anything that you would like our Buckaroo listeners to know about that you've been super enjoying recently?
Oh my gosh, this is difficult. This was mentioned at the beginning. I thought, what am I going to talk about? Because I am always consuming art all the
Mm-hmm.
dang time, and sometimes it's a sort of an artist that you give them a plug and that's a great thing. And because they're a dang small timer, and that always feels good. And then sometimes you're just in a zone where the things that you're enjoying are just very mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm in a dang mainstream moment, so I don't have anything that's particularly needs my boost. I will say the new book by T.J. Klune, who is
Oh, yeah,
did a
yeah.
yes, I think In the Lives of Puppets. I did a blurb for it. I read it early, and it just
Mm-hmm.
came out. And that's not horror or any way like that, but it is fantasy. And then I read a lot of early releases of books, and that one I just thought, wow. I mean, it really blew me away. And if Buckaroos want to support a queer writer writing fantasy in that way, that one is great. And then in a mainstream way, dang, I'm just been watching dang new season of dang Barry and all the shows that I
Oh,
watch, and
yeah.
and so I don't know. I have my other things going, but I just don't think that they need my help.
That's fair. Uh,
Yes,
of course, listeners, links to all of these things, whether mainstream or outsider, will be in the show notes so that you can find them
yes.
later.
Oh,
Chuck,
you know what? Can I say it?
oh, yeah.
I just thought of this. There's this band I started listening to called Ratboys,
Oh, cool.
and they are just so great. I think they're kind of big, but I'm just gonna throw that out there because I was listening to them this morning again on my dang playlist, and very cool, just very cool stuff. Yeah, so I'm gonna say that too.
Nice.
Put a link to Ratboys, their new album.
Yeah, I will be putting that on right after this for myself because I'm
Yes,
always looking for new music.
it is.
Uh, Finally, although I think most people already know the answer to this, where can our listeners find you elsewhere on the internet?
Oh wow, that's a good question because normally, I have such a big social media presence, but
Mm-hmm.
dang, every dang day, Twitter it becomes just a cesspool, and I don't know how much longer I'll be trotting there, but
Mm-hmm.
you can certainly check. I got one of those things blue sky invites, so I have that, and maybe it'll switch over, and then and Instagram, Facebook. I'm on TikTok as Real Chuck Tingle. I'm on Tumblr is I think that one is Dr. Chuck Tingle. But I will say of all the dang platforms, I get the most joy out of Tumblr. It
Mm-hmm.
feels like a blast from the past, but
Yeah, Tumblr is great.
really wonderful. So I think that's my favorite that I am on is probably Tumblr actually at this point. So I'm on everything. Just look up old Chuck Tingle.
Excellent. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been just such a delight.
Oh wow! Well, thank you, and I know I kind of sung your praises at the top of the show, but it is just so important for Buckaroos to be out telling their stories, and also
Mm-hmm.
outside of that and all that stuff, you are creating a space just to talk about reading and storytelling, and that in itself. I just hope you can recognize how much joy that brings and how um, just cosmically important that is to create spaces where buckaroos can discuss story because that is what we do as then human beings is
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that really separates us in a lot of ways from the animals is
Mm-hmm.
that we tell and create a story and that we can envision different new futures in this way and use that to prove love. So you are doing something that is so important. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Yes.
Tales from the Trunk is mixed and produced in beautiful Oakland, California. Our theme music is Paper Wings by Lillian Boyd. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/trunkcast. All patrons of the show now get a sticker and logo button, along with show outtakes and other content that can't be found anywhere else. You can find the show on Twitter, probably, at Trunkcast, and I tweet at HBBisnieks. If you like the show, consider taking a moment to rate and review us on your preferred podcast platform. And remember, love is real.